14,000 years ago, the first humans set foot in South America. They weren't just explorers. They were pioneers stepping into a world unlike anything they had ever seen. Towering mountains, endless jungles, a land untouched by time. But their journey wasn't a single path. Two groups took radically different routes, setting the stage for a divide that would shape the continent for generations. One group followed the Pacific coastline, drawn to the fertile valleys and the towering Andes. They pushed higher and higher, into a world where survival meant confronting nature's most brutal tests. At over 10,000 feet above sea level, the air grew thin. Oxygen levels dropped. Temperatures plummeted. The human body didn't just struggle, it began to change. Their lungs expanded. Their hearts grew stronger. Their blood became richer in oxygen. Over generations, they weren't just adapting. They were evolving into something the world had never seen before. Humans built for the mountains. Meanwhile, the second group ventured deep into the Amazon, where a different kind of battleground awaited. Not altitude, not cold, but an invisible enemy, disease. The jungle was teeming with parasites, infections, and venomous threats lurking in every shadow. Here, survival didn't favor endurance, it favored resistance. Over thousands of years, their bodies developed one of the most powerful immune systems on Earth. Their DNA became an invisible armor, passing down enhanced defenses against infections that would devastate outsiders. Two worlds, two evolutionary paths. The high-altitude warriors of the Andes, engineered for endurance. The immune-strong survivors of the Amazon, built to resist nature's deadliest threats. This wasn't just a geographical split. It was a genetic divide that would shape the fate of South America for thousands of years. But this was just the beginning, because soon, one of these groups would take their genetic endurance to new heights, giving rise to an empire unlike anything the world had ever seen. High in the Andes, where the air is razor-thin and the mountains stretch beyond the clouds, a hidden battle was unfolding, not one of swords or empires, but of genetics. Nature had drawn a line between two worlds, the unforgiving peaks of the Andes and the endless, untamed jungles of the Amazon. As centuries passed, the people of these lands didn't just survive, they changed. Their DNA reshaped itself to conquer their environments. In the towering Andes, survival was a test of endurance. The lack of oxygen forced the human body to evolve in ways never seen before. The Andean people developed larger lungs, stronger hearts, and more oxygen-rich blood. But there was something even more extraordinary. Scientists have discovered a unique mutation, HAN2AS1, that allows Andean highlanders to thrive where others would struggle to breathe. This adaptation is so powerful that even modern athletes at sea level can't match their endurance. The Andes didn't just shape their civilization, they rewrote their biology. Meanwhile, deep in the Amazon, another kind of war was raging. This wasn't a fight against thin air, but against an invisible enemy, disease. The rainforest, humid and teeming with life, was also filled with deadly pathogens. Viruses, bacteria, and parasites turned the jungle into a biological battlefield, where only those with the strongest immune systems could survive. Over thousands of years, Amazonian populations developed one of the most powerful immune responses on Earth. Their DNA carries an enhanced form of the CD45 gene, a mutation that strengthens their defenses against infections that would cripple outsiders. Unlike the Andean highlanders, their survival wasn't about endurance, it was about resistance. These two genetic paths created two entirely different kinds of humans, one built to conquer the mountains, the other designed to resist the jungle's silent killers. But despite their differences, these civilizations were never truly isolated. History shows that the Andean and Amazonian worlds often collided, through trade, through war, and sometimes through blood. The genetic exchange between these two environments wasn't just about survival. It was about adaptation on an even greater scale. The Andean DNA, fine-tuned for altitude, would soon become the foundation for something far greater. An empire was coming, one that would use these genetic advantages to rise above the rest. Before the rise of the Inca, before the Spanish conquest, before the world even knew the power of the Andes, there was the Wari. They were more than just an empire. They were the first to reshape Andean genetics on a massive scale. Between 600 and 1000 AD, The Wari didn't just conquer territories. They merged populations, isolated mountain communities, each with their own genetic adaptations, were drawn into a single domain. As trade routes expanded and bloodlines mixed, a new generation of high-altitude survivors emerged, stronger and more resilient than ever before. But the Wari were more than warriors. They were architects of survival. Their roads, later perfected by the Inca, connected distant Andean populations for the first time. Their irrigation systems allowed agriculture to flourish at impossible altitudes, ensuring that their people wouldn't just live, they would thrive. This wasn't just about civilization. This was about endurance, biological and cultural. And then, just as quickly as they rose, the Wari collapsed. Climate shifts, political unrest, internal conflicts. Their cities fell silent, their roads emptied. But their greatest contribution didn't vanish with them. The Inca would one day inherit everything the Wari built, their knowledge, their infrastructure, their genetic foundation. Without the Wari, the Inca might never have existed. Their empire may have crumbled, but their bloodline lived on, evolving, adapting, preparing for something greater. A new empire was coming, one that would take the genetic endurance of the Andes to its ultimate peak. The Inca Empire didn't just rise, it dominated. In less than a century, they built the largest civilization in the Americas, stretching across modern-day Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, and beyond. They carved cities into cliffs, engineered roadways that defied gravity, and ruled over millions without a written language. But their greatest weapon wasn't stone or steel. It was inside them. For centuries, Andean DNA had been forging an evolutionary advantage, allowing the Incas to master one of the harshest landscapes on Earth. While outsiders gasped for breath at high altitudes, Inca warriors moved effortlessly through the mountains. Their blood carried more oxygen, their hearts pumped stronger, and their lungs processed air more efficiently than anyone else's. This wasn't just natural selection. It was an empire built on genetic endurance. But the Incas weren't just shaped by evolution. They controlled it. Their ruling elite strategically arranged marriages, ensuring that the strongest and most resilient genes were passed down. They weren't just building an empire, they were engineering a superior bloodline. Spanish chroniclers were stunned by what they witnessed. Inca messengers could cover hundreds of miles in days, running across treacherous mountain roads without rest. No horses, no wheels, just human endurance at its peak. But even the strongest bloodline couldn't prepare them for the enemy they never saw coming. The Spanish arrived in 1532, bringing steel, guns, and the deadliest weapon of all, disease. Smallpox swept through the empire before a single battle was fought. Villages fell silent. Generals died before they could lead their armies. More Incas perished from disease than from war. The same DNA that had allowed them to conquer the mountains had no defense against European viruses. The empire collapsed, but the bloodline didn't. The Spanish may have conquered the Inca Empire, but they never erased its people. The bloodline of the Andean highlanders endured, surviving war, colonization, and centuries of hardship. Even today, the descendants of the Inca still carry the same high-altitude adaptations that once powered their ancestors to greatness. Modern genetic research has uncovered something remarkable. These adaptations are still influencing human endurance today. Scientists studying Andean populations have found that their ability to process oxygen more efficiently isn't just a historical advantage. It's shaping medicine, sports, and even space exploration. Athletes with Andean ancestry are outperforming others in extreme conditions, capable of running, hiking, and climbing at high altitudes with minimal exhaustion. Their bodies, fine-tuned over thousands of years, carry an edge no modern training regimen can replicate. But the impact of Andean DNA goes beyond athletics. Researchers are using these genetic discoveries to develop treatments for altitude sickness, heart disease, and oxygen deficiency. What once helped Inca warriors conquer mountains could one day help astronauts survive deep space missions or assist patients suffering from cardiovascular conditions. The Spanish conquest may have shattered the Inca Empire, but it never erased the people. Their language, their traditions, and most importantly, their genetic legacy still shapes South America today. The Andes don't just hold ancient ruins, they hold a living history, written not in stone, but in blood. The empire fell, but the genes that built it live on.